Hey everyone, in this video, we're going to talk all about advanced delivery. So we talked about the foundations of delivery: rate, pitch, volume, dynamism, eye contact, body movement, but now it's about taking it to the next level. So we're going to dive into some tips, some best practices, some ideas and philosophies that I have about how to take your delivery to that advanced level. So let's dive right in. And let's first kind of talk about what makes for a great delivery. I want you to pull some inspiration right now from those in your life, from those around you who you believe are tremendous public speakers, right? Who gives exceptional presentations. And chances are it's not only because they have the foundations covered, not only do they have great content, but they're doing it in a way that you consider to be charismatic, dynamic, engaging, energetic, right? So what is it that you are looking for? What appeals to you? What's so important about the answer to this question is that you need to identify styles that you like, that you enjoy, because chances are that is going to be what's closest or most accessible for you to pull out of yourself. All right. So once you've begun to identify styles that you're drawn to, or maybe even some public speaking or presentation role models, I want you to begin to think about the characteristics that they have, that they rely on, right? So what is it? Do they rely on their voice or their facial expressions? Is it movement? Is it the cadence or the rate or the pitch, right? So for me, I really enjoy and have always loved stand-up comics, right? I think it's so captivating that they can rely on just their words to paint a picture inside the audience's mind that brings us to an emotional expression, right? That really hopefully allows us to find some enjoyment, some thrill in the words that they're putting together. And for me, one of the things that makes stand-up comedians just such great artists and helps me to think about my own presentation styles is their cadence, the rhythm, right? The way that they use the words and the order that they use the words and the pacing and the timing. So that's something that I'm constantly thinking about myself as I try to improve my ability is how can I improve my rhythm and my rate? Now for you, if you're just getting going in your public speaking career and you don't have a tremendous amount of experience, it might just be trying to get some of those foundations to the next level. It could be focusing on articulation. One of the things that you may want to do to help improve over the next several years is really focusing on becoming incredibly articulate, ensuring that everybody in your audience hears every single word that you have to say with clarity, right? For those of you who do have a little bit more experience, maybe it's facial expressions. Maybe it's trying to make sure that you're always matching your facial expression with the tone or the sentiment that you're trying to provide. And you're doing it with great intentionality, right? So you are contorting your face when necessary to make sure that your audience can really understand how you feel. And as a result, helping them to feel the way that you want them to. So whatever it is that stands out to you as being something that you really look up to, that you admire, that's a great place for you to start this conversation and say, I want to work on that. That's the spot that I'm going to try to improve in the short term. So we'll dive right in. We'll talk a little bit more about some of these things in details, but that should be at the center of your next journey in regards to improving your skill. All right, so we've already answered this question, right, in regards to who's somebody that we think is dynamic. So let's go on and talk about what these dynamic deliverables might actually look like. I used some words earlier to describe this idea of being lively, but also having this sense of being confident and also engaging. So when I put those things together, that to me really makes me think of dynamism. I want to suggest that one of the easiest ways that you can improve your overall dynamism is by thinking about what that actually means, right? To have dynamism, to be dynamic, is this idea that we can fluctuate, that we can create range on the primary characteristics of public speaking. In other words, right, if you think about the foundations of having eye contact, of having some good gestures, of having great body posture, of having a vocal command over your words and your nonverbal inflection towards those words, we then want to kind of pull apart and say, how do we create range, right? So it's not just having consistent eye contact with a part of the room, right? It's full scanning, and it's the ability to engage every single person in the room, to make meaningful eye contact with them, and then to break the eye contact at the right points, right? To look up or down, left or right, when you're trying to create separation from them. When you want to seem different, you break eye contact, right? And you let them see you as being different, because that's the point that you're maybe trying to make. When you want to hold them accountable, you look them in the eye and you tell them as much, right? So what we want to do here now, as you're thinking about advanced delivery, is you need to start creating range. So if you're somebody who normally speaks really fast or speaks really slow, you're now thinking about, how do I intentionally shift the rate of my speech to make sure that I can speed up and slow down, and I can do it with command. Again, facial expressions, body movements, etc. Whatever it is that has become kind of your go-to and is your standard approach, I want you to start analyzing it and saying, okay, that's kind of how I know I can operate. Now, how do I get better by offering some juxtaposition, by offering some dynamism in my delivery? I have a picture of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on here, right? For me, as a kid growing up, watching wrestling, one of the things I always thought was so cool was that these performers would go out and they would have these, these fake fights, right? Everybody knew that they weren't actually wrestling against each other, and yet they were still so convincing and captivating. And one of the reasons why is because they were really relying on their ability to be charismatic, right? They were relying on this it factor that they could command attention. One of the things that for me has stood out over the years that I've looked to and that I have integrated into my own style, especially when it comes to live presentations, is presenting with a sense of urgency. To me, I feel like when I think about life, time is really that one thing that we can never get back. And so when you present with a sense of urgency, for me, it's my way of respecting my audience and saying to them, your time is important, and I really appreciate you listening to me. So I'm going to do everything I can to try to convey as much valuable information in a short amount of time, because that's my respect to you and the life that you want to go live. So there tends to be this sense of urgency. And I think that that can sometimes convey into a sense of being confident and into being engaging, because it's like, this is important. Let's do this right now. For you, what I want you to do is I want you to be thinking about, all right, like, what's that thing that you want to know? Like, what's your signature piece, right? Like, maybe it's patience. Maybe it's not urgency at all. Maybe it's patience. Maybe it's kindness. Maybe it's understanding. Maybe it's adventure. Maybe it's just being funny, right? So whatever you think you're going to kind of brand as your style, you then are going to start thinking about ways that you can intentionally help to achieve that style. Now, let's talk about something that for me really needs to be at the core of a great presenter. Those are the 4 H's. They need to be humble with great humility. They've got to be honest. They've got to be true. They've got to be genuine. They have to have heart, right? They need to be funny in some ways, right? And I always find that great presenters have a way to be relatable and to find light in the moment and even in the toughest moments. So these are the 4 H's: humility, heart, honesty, and humor. And for me, that is what I look for on a consistent basis when I'm evaluating somebody's dynamism, but also something that, as I mentioned, I'm striving to try to provide my audience as I'm presenting as well. One of the things I want to draw your attention to, one of my favorite speeches that for me captures these 4 H's as good as any of the speeches that I've seen out there, is Jimmy V's Never Give Up speech when he accepted the ESPY Award, right? So Jimmy Valvano, coach of NC State, national championship winner at the time, was the highest seed to ever win the men's NCAA basketball championship for Division I. He gets up to accept this ESPY, and as he suggests in his speech, he is on the verge of death. He has cancerous tumors all over his body, and he gets up and knocks this speech out. If you haven't seen the Jimmy V speech, you can go ahead and stop this one right now if you want and call that one up and come back and watch the rest of this later. But it really does. It captures these ideas so well. It's funny and it's honest and it's genuine. And it's something that, for me, when you're thinking about pushing the limits on your ability to deliver effectively, this might be something that inspires you to take chances and to maybe think outside your comfort zone when you listen to the words that Jimmy V has to tell you. To me, I think you'll find them quite resonating with the message that I'm sharing today. I won't spoil any more of it, because if you haven't seen it, you got to check it out. Okay, let's finally kind of talk a little bit about this concept of storytelling. So for me, one of the things that happens is that as you mature and advance in your presentation career, one of the things that should happen is that you should be using these foundations of public speaking everywhere you go, right? In the sense that while you might not be standing in front of audiences, you haven't done research on them, and maybe you haven't organized a full outline, etc., there are a lot of really dynamic cues that we work on that are really helpful when you're telling a story, right? So really, life and many of our interactions, they're stories, right? When we get together with our family, when we get together on the weekends with our friends, when we sit down with our work colleagues before and after meetings, right? What are we doing? We're telling stories. What are you up to? Where are you going? How was that place? What did you think of that show? What did you think of whatever was said the other night on TV, et cetera? So we're telling stories, we're giving our opinions. And one of the things that I want to make sure that you're aware of is that there is a process to be able to tell stories that are a little bit more interesting. They're a little bit more engaging, a little bit more fun. They can advance the narrative, if you will. And so you can use story to really convey who you are as a person. And I want you to start thinking about these little moments that you have a chance to tell your story, right? Every time that somebody asks, how are you doing? Or how's your day going? Or what'd you do this weekend? Or what are you going to get up to in the future? What are your goals? What are your aspirations, right? Those are moments where like you can give any answer, right? We get asked so many open-ended questions almost on a daily basis, right? When we're out interacting with people, we get asked all of these open-ended questions. How are you, right? How are you? What do you say to that answer? If you're simply saying, I'm good, right? Maybe what you're really suggesting to me is that like, you're not interested in talking, like you don't want to engage this conversation. But if you get asked that question by somebody that you want to talk to, and you miss the opportunity to say, you know what's so great is I had such an interesting morning, or I had such a fun and exciting morning, or this negative thing that could have kind of ruined my day, I didn't let it, because that's my spirit, is to kind of keep going and to push it. So what I'm suggesting here is that the next time you get an open-ended question, instead of being maybe a little bit shorter, use that as an opportunity to tell a quick, brief little story that gives us some insight either into how you're feeling or into your character, right? Those of you going off to do job interviews, or maybe you'll be interviewing somebody at some point in the near future, right? And you're going to have an opportunity to say like, hey, how was your morning? Or did you get in okay? Or right, were you able to find us? The answers to those questions tell me a lot about your character. And so there's opportunities here in our day-to-day lives to be able to tell better stories. And so one of the things I just want to share with you that's really simple, and it'll change the way that you tell stories, is this concept of the and, but, therefore method. Really, really easy. It was helped kind of advanced by Randy Olson, an author, a former marine biologist who went out to Hollywood and made movies and recognized that really Hollywood and scientists should be working together to tell better stories about science. But if you look at the ABT method, we're not going to credit it to Randy, nor would he take credit for it. But instead, if we go back to kind of some of the best speeches, to our best screenwriters of all time, they're using this method all the time, and it's all around us. So check this out, right? It's as simple as saying this: when you're telling a story, try to avoid using this concept of having this and method, right? So I went to the store, and then I came home, and then I made dinner, and then I went to bed, and then I got up the next day and I went to work, and right, you're going, this story stinks. Like, this is super boring, right? We want to get to the part of the story with the drama. And for you and I, right, that drama comes from that but statement, right? So as soon as I say, I was out in the world and I was doing this thing and it was going really well, but, and everybody's going to hang on that word, because whatever comes next, we know from a storytelling standpoint is going to be the part of the story we're going, well, what happened, Rory? Like, what changed, right? Like, what was this thing that you were able to kind of encounter or overcome? And I want you to think about it first in the sense of how you tell the story of your life, like right now. Like, why are you in college, or why are you watching this video, or why are you taking a class, or why are you pursuing a certain job? And chances are, if you could actually morph that story into an ABT story, it'd be a lot more interesting for people who ask you that question, right? So, if it was for me, for example, just in my life over the last several years, it might be something like, I've been working in higher education, and I love the opportunities to work with young people and to do research and to stay on top of all the cutting edge and kind of latest science in my field. But I felt like there was a greater opportunity for me to serve a larger population, to serve more of my community, right? I wanted to make sure that I had a chance to share ideas and thoughts and insights with people beyond the walls of the university. So I therefore decided that I was going to start a consulting company, and that was going to give me an outlet to be able to serve different members of our community that wouldn't maybe have access to this learning otherwise, right? So, and was my enjoyment of it, but was feeling unfulfilled, that there was more to offer, that there was more to give, that there was more to engage. Therefore, I went and started this new business venture to give me an outlet to engage that need. Now, that's 3 sentences, and I want to invite you to think about what your 3 sentences are, right? Like, where are you in life? That's your and, right? But, right, something happened. What was that but moment? How did that thing change the way that you thought about the world? And therefore, what are you doing about that thing now? And you can use the ABT method for big stories and important stories, like things about, career changes or livelihood changes, but you can use it in your day-to-day interactions as well, and just changing the way that you tell your stories is going to make you a lot more interesting. And I think in a lot of ways, it's going to make you that more dynamic, that more charismatic presenter that, we really all aspire and admire to want to be. So I hope that you found something in here that's useful to you. I invite you to challenge yourself and try to push yourself in different ways to work on techniques to help take your delivery to that next level. So best of luck as you work through that approach.